little bit of what was said in the welcome address, Kodumunda is a very special place and is a unique position in the history of Kerala. It has been part of the reform movement of Kerala with V.T. Bhattacharya, of course. But then we also have Punnathur Nambi, who actually opened an institution which was not bound by the limitations of caste and taught Sanskrit to everyone. And V.T. Bhattacharya's attempt as part of the Ulbuddha system to actually initiate a colony, almost like a commune, where people of all castes and communities could live together, have a common kitchen, which is probably the most important thing. And this location and this particular village, even though he said it's a small village, the village may be small, but it's very huge in terms of its importance. Considering that we are here, let me start off with a particular issue in your own life. Because in a manner, if V.T. was working against the systems of caste from the 1930s, 40s onwards, from the 1990s or 1980s, you've been doing the same thing, in a manner of speaking. Of course in Tamil Nadu, and of course in terms of your work in music, but then it extended to other aspects of life, where you've taken a very pronouncedly political position when it comes to contemporary issues. But looking back on your childhood, I have always wondered, I wouldn't call it conservative, but you come from a traditional Tamil Brahmin family. Of course, your great uncle was T.K. Krishnamachari, the Union Minister and a freedom fighter. And of course, your uncle and your mother started a school for Adivasi children. And of course, you were educated in the Krishnamurti school. But still, the general confluence of circumstances is one in which it would have been rather traditional, especially when you learn Carnatic music. Your first guru, who was Bhagavadalu, and then Chingalpet Shankar, and of course, finally, Sharmagudi Srinivasa Iyer, who were all probably very rigorous traditionalists in a certain manner of speaking. So how did this urge, this need, shall I say, to actually question tradition, to move out of tradition, or try to find certain other aspects of tradition which were not available to the contemporary musicians, or which were probably shut out of their discourse? Where did this urge come from? How did it find a place in your music and your life?
I'd like to first say that it's, as always, an honor to have a conversation with Henry, and it's always been a pleasure to have a conversation, whether on stage or off stage, and an invigorating conversation. It always is. To be, you said, it's a small town with not just big ideas, but a small village with actually experimented with big ideas. I think we'd find in history, it's usually the small towns and villages that have actually come up with the most beautiful ideas and have actually tried it. It's cities who appropriated it at some point of time and taken probably credit for it. So thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for all of you for coming for this conversation. I wish I could speak in Malayalam. Unfortunately, I cannot. I can only understand Malayalam, so you'll have to tolerate my English for a while. To your question, so let me state the obvious first. I come from what you could call an urban, cosmopolitan, Brahmin family. As my friend says, English-speaking Brahmin family. That probably accurately describes a lot of people of my sort. And yes, in a sense, it is not conservative in that traditional way, in how we think conservatism is in our imagery, but That's the thing about this cosmopolitanism, right? We presume that, we confuse that with a notion of modernity in its more real sense. That it somehow is responding to today, is awakened to the consciousness of society and yourself. I don't think being cosmopolitan really actually gets you there. It enables you to use the tools of urbanness, of technology, of conveniences to, I think, somehow actually hide all that is already happening in society, including in your own habits. A classic case is people who still say, you know, in our cities there's no caste today. All we have to do is a caste map grid of any city. That's all you have to do. And you know there's caste. It's suburbs are subdivided fundamentally by caste groups or religious groups. So it is not like
zoning.
Yeah, it is zoning. Yeah, it is social zoning that we do in a way, unconsciously, possibly, sometimes consciously. So the fact is that even, I would say that even in our home, though there was no overt practice of discrimination, I think it's important for me to acknowledge that there were caste practices, though we never recognized it as caste practices, right? For example, who would be the cook in my house? It was always a Brahmin man or a Brahmin woman. It was a question that I never asked. It never came to my head that we only had one sort of a person who would make food for us. And kitchen is usually the telltale, like you said, for most things, right? So there were many things like that in the, shall we say, in subterranean level that was operating. And I think both my parents, or we never thought deeply about it. Though we were culturally reading and asking difficult questions. That's true. So I grew up in such a home. But the anomaly here is such a home is not common to the practice of Carnatic music. Now there is a cultural shift. Now Carnatic music is fundamentally in a very low middle class, conservative environment. The practice, the whole rigor, everything is associated with that traditional conservatism. In that way, I didn't come from that world, right? So me getting into Carnatic music in a way was unusual, right? So there is a cultural shift for me. So for me, for example, that world was conservative. Let's look at it that way. For me, that world was very protective and conservative. But the fact is that people with caste privilege, their greatest asset is adaptability. You will adapt. You know, you look at many caste practices, they've always adapted to times, right? So from not giving somebody water, you then move to having only plastic versus ever silver. Now that is adaptability of caste, right? So you always adapt, and the adaptation is done to secure yourself in that zone that you want, which is a zone of being at the top of that ladder of caste. So whether it is music, whether it is society, you keep adapting. So I could adapt to a conservative Brahmin world, I could come back to what would be an English-speaking Brahmin world, but it's still the Brahmin world, and there is this whole thing floating around, but we don't really consciously engage. My musical learning was also like that. My teachers were very conservative people, incredible teachers, but socially and conservative people. I was like this for all the 90s. I was exactly like this, and I would have probably said, what are you talking about caste? I never, like the standard answer, we never discuss caste at home. You know, that's a standard answer. Why do you have to discuss caste at home? Because you have no experience in your life, you will not discuss it at home. It's like a man saying, what are you talking about, all this discrimination against women? How does a man know? Man is clueless. It's no difference for caste, right? When a Brahmin doesn't know caste, because you're never put in that position to experience it. So if people with caste privilege said there is no caste, they will say, you please shut up, you have no clue about it. If a man says there's no discrimination against women, men should shut up and listen to women, right? So I grew up like that, and I sang music. I passionately loved this art form, right? I loved it then, I love it now, I love it forever. I mean, I just loved it. It became my being. It became, in many ways, something that I could just feel in my bones, as they say. Right? Why? I don't know. I have no reason for that. So I keep practicing this form, and honestly, caste or gender or class or religion were not in my head at all. Even when I asked difficult questions. And I've told you this before, and I know I will reiterate it now. What changed in my life? That's a question that I've tried to answer a billion times and I'm told, and my answer is I feel always insufficient, but I will still go for it. The thing about art, and I'm using art in the sense of music or theatre or poetry or dance or any other manifestations created by human beings, is the first question is, why did we even do this? Right? Why do we need art? I mean, there are people even now who says, keep art aside, make sure people have food, clothing and a house. Art can wait, right? So it's kind of taken to be like an add-on, a luxury. It's not really true. I think there is something art does to both the person creating it and the person receiving it in that moment that is tremendously precious. I think what happens in that moment, very simply put, is an experience of selflessness. Yeah. And so when you instinctively go for something, that moment in music, there is something that captures you that is not about whether you like me, whether you dislike me, whether that was in that raga, all that is irrelevant in that moment. You come in touch with something so profound that your body reacts. Your body reacts whether you want to react or not. That's when your body moves, that breath. Why does a person, you gasp, right? That gasp is the truth. And as a musician, the funny thing is you're taught not to show that on stage. As a musician, I'm told, listen, don't show your emotions and all that. That's for the audience. You have to sing. I was unfortunately a person who could never do that. I could never do that. So there were moments when I was singing music where I didn't know what happened. I just knew I couldn't sing another line. And those moments troubled me tremendously. They disturbed me. The reason they disturbed me was, in those moments, just like you would say aha, I was saying aha. Now who am I saying aha to? I sang. Right? But I'm saying aha. I mean, not say, but that moment is that aha. We call it the aha moment for whatever reason. Which means something has happened devoid of my ego, devoid of me saying, I am this great singer making you guys happy, that even I am looking at like a third person and saying, goodness gracious, like seeing the sunrise, or like anything else we experience in nature. But here the difference is, this is a human creation. Art is a human creation, it's an endeavor. Now this bothered me because when I was complete in control and making sure you did everything, applause and all that, I never felt that. I never got that. So I think there's a dichotomy here. One place I'm trained to make music of a certain high skill caliber. I know how to do it all. Mastery is that word I'm told, right? I have to master the craft. Yeah, I mastered it. What I'm singing is beautiful, I know that too. But I never feel that moment where it's that. And at that moment, I was the most vulnerable self. At that moment, I experienced life in a manner that I could never experience in my everyday being. At that moment, I was more truthful than I've ever been before or after. And my question was simple. Why is the rest of the moments in my music untruthful? If this is truthful, then I have to concede, even when you applaud, there's something untruthful going. And I know that sounds like a very, very disturbing statement to make. Because I'm using truth in a certain manner. I'm using truth in a manner that is non-subjective. So my question was, why is this play happening? So I said, okay, I need to know what this music is. So my research actually, MD, was about the history of Carnatic music, history of Indian music. I read a lot of books, a lot of manuscripts. I don't know much of Sanskrit, much of Telugu, much of any language. I troubled every scholar under the sun to explain to me what Bharata is saying, explain to me what Sharangadeva was saying. I tried going back. So I looked at the Dattilam, I looked at the Natashastra, I looked at the Sangeet Ratnakara, the Manalo Solo Asai. I mean, I looked at a lot. Silapatigaram, and I was trying to understand where did this music come from, how old is it, and what is these ragas we talk about, because these are the ways in which I'm experiencing that, right? So I have to know what it is. And it is through that process that I stumbled upon my identity. So my identity came from a very musical process. I suddenly said, okay, all these things I'm discussing cannot exist in vacuum. It's human beings. So who's singing? Who's not singing? Who's listening? Who's not listening? Who can sing but will not get a stage? Who was singing but doesn't exist anymore? So all these aesthetic things I talk about is created by human beings. Where are these human beings? Who are these human beings? The moment I stepped in there, I was discussing caste. I was discussing gender. I was discussing language. I was discussing all the things that I thought were disconnected to this discourse. And then my discourse became messier. It became very messy because I can't now just talk about changing Carnatic music or changing the way we imagine music in general. I look at it that way. But I have to talk about people. I have to recognize there has to be a self-introspection where I recognize that I'm a participant in this happening. That I am part of the reason why every human being here cannot feel what I feel when I hear Todi. I'm a cause for that not communicating with so many people. That's how I stumbled upon this.
That's extremely interesting. In fact, you've actually turned the whole thing on its head. Because usually what you find is there is a sense of society, a sense of what is wrong with society, attempts to reform it, change it, from which there are certain concepts of art that seem to evolve. And then
that's true. Yeah.
And then you have art which is, shall I say, informed by the sense of social responsibility, of social correction, etc. But what you're saying is that this sense of a problem arose from your practice of the art itself, from music itself.
That's true. In my case, it was exactly the other way.
I mean, I'm speechless. I don't know what to ask the next.
It was exactly that way. I mean, I know that if not for music, I would never be sitting here having this caste conversation with you. It sounds so bizarre. If not for Carnatic music, I wouldn't discuss caste. I mean, that's the best way for me to frame it. So, I think it also got me to ask fundamental questions on, what makes this music? What are its parts, its material? Because art is also, there's material. What is its material? And then you often find that half the thing that we think is its material is not material. It's social dogmas that we impose upon the material. So it also allowed me to throw the scaffolding and say, oh, this is trivial, this doesn't matter.
But then can I ask, in continuation of
yes.
that, in your research or in your inquiries, did you find that the kind of music that you were singing, which prevented you from singing the kind of music that you wanted to sing and to feel and get the audience also to feel along with you, was there some kind of social prevention of that which made it difficult for you and the other musicians too to actually discover themselves in the music?
Okay, this is a fascinating question. It's actually a very fascinating question because I can give you the obvious answer of singing social songs. I'm not going to give you that answer. So my repertoire today has repertoire which is about caste, which is about gender, which is about religion. That's the obvious things, right? Now, the obvious thing is that the moment you sing all those things, your music reaches a larger spectrum of people. Accept it, I'm not disagreeing. But I want to say something slightly more nuanced and deeper, and probably for some people will not make sense. See, I am not singing any of those songs. Hypothetically, say I'm singing a concert where I'm singing traditional repertoire. Let's put it within quotes. Is my singing of that repertoire today freer than it was 20 years ago? Let's ask that question, because that's the difficult question. it's odd for me to answer the question, but I'll answer it from what people have told me. People who don't know Carnatic music, or who have heard maybe a little bit of it, somehow feel that they're able to enter my space of art creation in a manner that they are not able to enter others or before. Part of it could be because they've heard my discourses and all that. That I will definitely say is also in their head. But there is, I think, something else about freedom. Freedom is also about how the person who is free feels that freedom. Right? And I think that this entire journey of mine freed me in my perceptions of even Raga, even Tyagaraja, even Dikshita. Right? I think I'm able to see that music, which is what part of the older repertoire, in a way that I feel liberated when I see it. I feel absolutely liberated. I'm in love with it. I don't think I was in love with it like this even 25 years ago. No. And I think that comes from being aware of a larger world, being informed from the larger world, learning about freedom in the largest sense, about liberty, about justice. We forget that all that should inform every note. When I say pa, it's not just one note. That pa should just fly. And if it has to fly, I have to be absolutely free. Which means every ethical quality that we hold dear to our hearts must be somehow communicated in that utterance of that note. And I do like to believe in that somehow, not always, because I'm also fragile and a damaged human being. I do believe that sometimes it happens that I'm able to share that freedom for myself and for people. So at that point, it doesn't matter to me whether I'm singing on God, whether I'm not singing on God, whether it's a Dikshita Kirtanam, whether it is a modern, that becomes an irrelevant part. So I think it has changed. You know, I can just say this. I hear music very differently than I ever heard before. It's in my ear. You ask me how, I can't answer that question. I hear my voice differently. I've told you this before. If I listen to my music 25 years ago, what I hear, and it may break the heart of people who like that TM Krishna, it's violent for me. I know it's a very strong word to use, but it offends me. I'm talking about my own music. I think it's far more skillful than I am today. I was able to do things in my voice when I was 25 that I can't pull off when I'm 50. There's abilities which are, I know, pretty high, but yet, that TM Krishna's voice offends me. And I'm using a strong word because I want to push the pedal on this conversation. Why does it? Because I feel there is something very dominant about it. There is something very pressurizing about it. There's something extremely egotistical about it. And it is not just personal ego, it is social ego. It's cultural ego. It is caste ego. And I can feel all that. And that bothers me today. And I accept that reality. I'm not rejecting that reality.
See, this is going in a direction which I had no idea it would go, but I can't help asking this question. When you say that you see and you feel Tyagaraja or Shyama Shastri in a different way today, it's interesting that there are two very binary discourses that take place. One is a total rejection of Tyagaraja, of Ramayana, of Mahabharata, in the sense that they are so steeped in caste. And take every word, any phrase, any line, and it will be possible for you to discover caste in that. On the other hand, there is a traditionalist who say that despite all that, there is some kind of a truth inside that. And you seem to be taking a very different route altogether. And you're trying, or you have discovered, what one would call truth in your own interpretation of the Agaraja, or in your own rendering of the Agaraja, or your own discovering of yourself in the Agaraja.
That's probably the best way to put it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that turns the whole question into a very different kind of problematic. Because generally speaking, what we have today when it comes to literature, poetry, art, theatre, whatever it is to approach these things in terms of their content. When you say, am I singing of God, am I singing of bhakti, but in terms of content. But you are trying to suggest that there is another level to it, another plane to it of experience, which may be called by the term form, but which does not fully, contain, the word form does not fully contain that. There is something surplus there, which if you're ready to look at and ready to experiment with, it will be possible for you to discover.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better than that. I completely think so. I think the sociological way of looking at it, right? It has its place. Like you said, if you look at it that way, every word can be, if you're a person who's looking sociologically as an anti-caste warrior, or you can look at every word written in 200 years ago by any of these people and place it problematically within caste domains. And I'm not rejecting that there's probably validity in that kind of looking. But one is it's anachronistic to look at it that way. But there's another question. What then has, beyond caste, I'll ask myself that question, not other people. Beyond, of course, that the classical music always survived because of caste privilege, etc., all givens are taken. What is it in that song, in that Yanduku Pedala, or that Shri, whatever, Vichva Kirtanam of Dikshita you wanted to, Shri Matrubhutam of Dikshita, or in the Kamakshi Swarajati, what is at play that is transcending? Is there anything else at play at all? Right? And I think that what you find, and I think what you need to recognize, and it is a problematic recognition, is that every one of these beings were also seeking freedom. Exactly. They came from a certain social context, and their social context automatically is burdened with all that they knew, did not know, willing to grapple, not willing to grapple, their limitations as human beings, etc. All accepted, taken. In fact, I've written a piece which is critical of all these things. So I know exactly what I'm talking about. At the same time, in that todi, there is something. And that contradiction to me is not something to be ironed out. The contradiction is what you have to be experiencing and looking at. Because you and I are exactly that. Whatever progressive conversations we may have, we are also that contradiction. We also grapple with that contradiction within ourselves. So, and art happens only when there is a contradiction. If there's no contradiction, there's no art. Because the artist is then struggling. He finds freedom, and then he's going back to this little box and saying, why am I in this box? Rama, come and free me from this box. And then Rama doesn't come, Begada comes and frees him from the box. Isn't that such a fascinating human movement? I mean, this is divinity to me. If I were to use this word, this movement is truly divine because it is real. This is real. This is not something that is imaginary. This is the human struggle. And I think that struggle is what I would call most precious in art. And I am saying that there is something layered that we refuse to see. The moment we embrace that, we have an entry into these compositions that I don't believe we can have otherwise. You may still, again, this has not got to do with how well somebody is singing, how beautiful it is, whose version of all that's trivial matters. I don't care a damn about it. That's trivial. But to be able to go here, you must be willing to grapple with that, which means, going back to that fundamental point, is if you're not willing to grapple with that within yourself, that caste, that gender, that every social class, all these issues within yourself, you will also not see that transcendence and that coming back to the limitation, that whole struggle and grappling, you will not see in these great people. You will not even recognize it in them. Until you recognize it within yourself, you can't see form or something that is inspired beyond form. You cannot see it.
There is this great statement that every true work of art helps you to realize alterity, otherness. അപരത്വത്തെ കണ്ടെത്താനാണ് എല്ലാ യഥാർത്ഥത്തിലുള്ള കലാ പ്രവൃത്തിയും നമ്മെ സഹായിക്കുന്നത്. So in that sense, your idea of standing apart from yourself and seeing something happening there, which is not contaminated by your own ego, makes sense. Now let's move on a little bit. And from that music, you became an activist. So how did that happen? Because after that, you sound so nice, so good with your very aesthetic discourse, but then you started becoming very objectionable to many people.
I still seem to be. So.
Yes, and you started coming out with not just lectures, not just statements, but books, the wholesome books which actually address very contemporary, not social issues, political issues. How did that come through? Because it's not often that you find artists really taking that leap.
I don't know actually. I just know one thing. I'm one of these people who... The thing that really excites me in life, I was just telling somebody yesterday, is actually ideas.
Is to make someone else happy.
No. Is ideas. And for me, an idea, I'm obsessed. And I'm also not somebody who will sit on it. I'll just jump. I won't think of consequences. Probably will more because I'm a little older now, but not at least 15, 20 years ago. I will just do. And if I fail, I fail. I'm okay with that. I will survive it, dust myself off and get up and walk. That's how I've been. So, being an activist just happened very, very organically, as they say. I think Southern Music, the book I wrote, was in a way catalyst to becoming an activist, because it was the first book that bridged multiple discourses into one. A political discourse, a social discourse, an aesthetic discourse, and historical discourse together in one publication, and looking at one art form and in a way giving a language to write it, because it had never been written about before. So I think that, in fact, writing the book, I think, was a huge part of my growth. Because till then I just had these disparate ideas in many locations. The book allowed me to spend 4 years of saying, how do they talk to each other? Do they talk to each other? How do I make sense of it as a human being or as an artist? I think that gave me greater clarity on how I could act as an artist in this discourse beyond just singing Carnatic music in a more modern way, or whatever you want to say. And I think that's when I started observing and responding to things that were happening in writing. I did write before that. I was writing a column for quite some time, but I think my writing changed from about that time. And then I started writing a lot about issues that were beyond the world of the arts. And writing led to speaking, then it also led to the question of saying, what do I do as a singer in this discourse? Which meant repertoire, which meant challenging, I would call challenging 3 elements in art: people, space, and content. And I think that covers the spectrum. So challenging notions of who sings, who doesn't sing, where do you sing, why do you sing, those things. Spaces, where? Why should classical music have certain requirements? Why should we not be on the street? Right? And also what I sing about. Are there limitations to what I sing about? So every one of these things happened in a way very organically. One led to another, led to another. It also led to, you were asking something before, I'm just going to loop this back about how does it get communicated with colleagues on stage. One simple act I did many years ago changed everything for my colleagues, and they tell me, is the way we sat on stage. Yeah, I changed it for multiple reasons. And after doing it, all my colleagues said I feel free. That was fascinating. They said, no, I've never felt so free than sitting how I sit today.
Is it just a matter of hierarchy, or is there something else that makes musical sense there?
There is something that makes musical sense. That is one fundamentally is sound. Having the ghatam or the ganjira behind is honestly very, very wrong. Because the left mic of the mridangam will always bounce off the ghatam or the ganjira. And the ganjira it's worse because it's a bass tambourine. They will clash. Sitting as C actually in terms of sound is the most logical thing to do, actually. But the problem is I am the center, right? Now if I have to move myself off center, why would I do that? Come on, I'm the star. Right? I can't tell you how uncomfortable I was when I moved myself. I struggled with it. It was awful. Sitting in the center with people like as if they were like your guards or something on both sides. And that poor Ghatam artist is seen once in a while behind. I was the Raja, and suddenly now I became one of 4 ministers in the court. It was so horrible, just moving yourself on the side. And this is just part of the whole thing, right? So I think it also reflected back in my practices, even in seating. So southern music, and then also it enlarged my conversation. Sebastian and Sons. I saw that caste is not just about the stage. Caste is about everything else that's off stage. And then you're talking about communities, about people. It's not just about the mridangam. And it's also about who sings, which are the people who have not been given the limelight. So I think the activism looped back onto the stage in a way. And then I said, I will sing about Allah. I'll sing about Jesus. I'll sing about everybody under the sun. I'll sing about nobody. I will sing about anybody I want. I'll sing about Ambedkar. I will sing about Periyar. Simple as that. So, but why? Because that is also part of the larger discourse you're having. Larger discourse of saying, how do we participate as a larger community in this world of not just art making, of human sharing. That's what a society should be. We should be sharing. As hard as it is.
I think it's also a matter of visibility, in the sense that when you change the format of how the artists are arranged on the stage, all of a sudden, as you said, you had to move to the side, and in a sense, there was a center which was not a person, with the violinist just on your left side, and almost like a C or a semicircle. Visually, it makes a lot of difference, but it's not just that visibility. It's a visibility of equality that seems to be there.
True.
And continuing with that, especially when you started with in announcements of concerts, when you started mentioning mridangam makers, violin makers, mridangam repairers, all of a sudden an entire world which was never acknowledged, so to speak, and who were always considered, shall I say, second grade or lower grade, they came to be visible. It was a very political act, so to speak. How did the Carnatic music establishment react to that?
Do I really need to respond to that question? Listen, I completely understand the discomfort. I completely understand the anger. The thing is, I understand it very well because I know that world inside out. And I think that the anger and the discomfort is accentuated because I know that world inside out, because I belong to that world. If I was somebody else from outside speaking all this, nobody would care a damn. They would just put me on the side and say, oh, some researcher sitting in some university is writing something, who cares? Now, I am unfortunately a decent singer. I can hold a tune. I also know every function. I know how this world works. I know how the caste world works. I know how the Carnatic music world within that caste world works. So I know the entire operations. I know every sly comment. I know every suggestion. I know what it means even before anybody. I know every site. I know. So that's the problem. Right? So there's no way to refute anything I'm saying in a logical sense other than being angry. And I also understand the anger. I mean, it's not like I don't. I probably would have been angry if I was the old TM Krishna of 30 years ago. I would have probably said, who's this guy to talk all this? Right? So I get it. But you know, this is inevitable at some level, right? It's inevitable that such conversations and such changes or such challenging, I won't say changes, cause more than a ripple. They cause anxiousness. Actually, a lot of it is coming from anxiousness. The anxiousness is that, oh my God, if everything is going to change, what do I have to hold on to? Right? And how is it any different from anxiousness in any other societal transformation? The community that wants to hold the old is going to try and hold it harder. Right? So, it has been, but at the same time, I want to say this. This is true, and I'm not going to deny that it has not been easy for me. I mean, it's definitely not been easy, and also I've taken very larger political positions added to this. It's not just this. So my political position is very clear as far as this country goes, as far as what I believe, which direction this country is going, and I will not ever back off on that. So I think this is coupled with that, because as we are saying, both are very deeply connected. But beyond this, it is also true that there are enough young people in this country today who want this discourse, who are participating in this active discourse, which is a coming together of culture, art, and society and politics. And I think the anxiousness of the conservatives comes from that. The worry is young people are thinking. Why should young people think? They should think the way I want them to think. Right? So I think the concern is coming from the fact that young people are listening. And not that all the young people have to agree with me, but they realize that this is a discussion that needs to be had. They recognize there is a problem in the way our society is designed. They recognize that there's a problem in the way each one behaves. They are conscious about it, they are thinking about it, and they will find their own pathways, which means the old order, bluntly put, MD, is going. It will go. It's only a question of how much more are we willing to sacrifice and do to ensure that it's going to go in the direction of just a far more equal society.
A rather naughty question. Just as there is opposition, there is also a great celebration of T.M. Krishna, because he is an activist. He has taken a political position which is amenable to certain sections of
the activisty world.
Exactly. And so you also find a lot of people who would probably never ever go to a classical music or even go to a music concert thronging to a T.M. Krishna concert. How do you see that?
I always tell all leftists, you guys know nothing about culture. And I loudly say it, people on the left, you guys don't know culture. And I'm going to say it out loud here, so to just make it problematic for all of us here. So the activisty world, or the left activisty world, often connects itself with culture as a tool for something. This is fundamentally flawed. You have to figure out a relationship with culture because you're a human being. You have to have a relationship with the past because you're a human being, not because of an ideological position. And once you do that, the way you understand, say, old practices, old cultures, old art forms, transforms. So I want to start from there, throw that statement out, and then I can escape and run for home. But you know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that, yeah, that is also a problem. Because there is one good thing, is that people who never came for Carnatic concerts are landing up to concerts, so I'm pretty happy about it. So for the first time in their life, they're like, I never heard Carnatic music, I'll listen to T.M. Krishna for whatever reason, I'm glad you're coming. Okay, that's one. But what I want to say is that this is the point I want to say. Irrespective of everything, why are we engaging with art? You can't just celebrate me because I am holding the right political positions that align with you. That can be one reason, I agree. But is it possible for you to see the art that is being produced as not an alignment? Exactly.
It is elemental, as something that is fundamental.
Exactly. I think that is very important. And so my only request to them is, yeah, I mean, we all share political views, we are all pretty much on the same page, But let's move to that elemental area, because then I think your politics will also improve, by the way. I think your politics will be far better. I think you will see art differently, you will see culture differently. So I think that that needs to happen also, because we are also talking about the future, we're talking about where are we going. And I think introspection for all of us is essential, because culture is, whatever cultures is probably the plural, is at the crux of the conversation we are having today. It is at the heart of that conversation. So it is not about changing culture, it is not about making sure people come in one direction. No, it's about actually dissolving in culture first in the elemental level. And then from that, allowing the politics to emerge, because ethically we are all on the same page. And in a way, maybe I'm speaking from my experience in the way I travel, because my travel was from immersion and the politics came from that. Maybe I'm reflecting that in my outward view. But I do believe there's something valuable to that. If I can just dive into a culture, non-judgmental, let's say there is 100 atrocities, socially unacceptable practices in that culture, hypothetically, in an art form. Can I still dive into it? Can I still experience what is being experienced? And then say, okay, this is the experience you want, right? That's what you treasure actually, not all that. Can we still have that experience and challenge everything you built around it? Don't throw the baby with the bathwater. And often in our activism, we are throwing the baby with the bathwater. And that is a problem. And that allows, if I may say, for the other side, to very easily tap into anger, into hate, and very easily manipulate the situation. So there is something for us to think about.
And also reject all possibility of change.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's the other big problem, right? How can we reject all possibility of change? We cannot. And we have seen enough. And this other thing is this absolute position that you hold for what it means to be progressive. What rubbish is this? You and I are not that. But we expect it out of the world. It's not going to happen. Just look at what you do in your house. You know you're not that. So what is it? What is that? What are the boxes that a person needs to tick for you to say yes, change has happened? Who gauges that? I think the more deeper question is, can there be a deep engagement in conversation? A truthful conversation, and I want to stress this, a non-violent conversation. Can there be that conversation? And can there be then an agreement that, yeah, we all need to move in a manner without holding on to various baggages, but can that lead to respect? Can there lead to non-violence, or in its most profound sense, not just about killing people, but even killing ideas, killing voices, or killing body language? We forget about that. There's violence in the way a woman should walk. You kill body language of a woman. She can't walk a certain way, but a man can walk a certain way. It starts at very simple things in life. So I think that that's something that the activist world, and I am part of that world, I'm speaking from of myself too, because I'm also as much a party to these problems, right? Can we? And I think that there is a way there. It's the other thing, things take a long time. We have to wait. We have to slog it out, maybe a decade, maybe a more. But it's essential that a certain amount of a philosophical perception to public action has to be there.
But it's very ironic that you say this at a point of time in our country's history where not just the regular possibility of something like that, but even the possibility of expression, even the possibility of saying something the way you want to say it, to wear a dress the way you want to wear it. Your lungi may be, if it's called a dhoti, may be objectionable to some.
Oh, it's already been objectionable. There's enough rights about me wearing what I wear. So,
all right, there you go. So in that way, there is a culture of intolerance which is increasing not just day by day, but by every minute, and which is always followed by either threats or real enactment of violence. So as an artist, and I'm not talking of an activist here, I mean, as an artist who's also an activist, how do you practice art in that time? And what, I don't know, I mean, I can't ask further.
Yeah, I mean, I think all you need to do is Google my name to know that I've struggled with this for a long time now. At least for at least a decade, I've battled this multiple orders of silencing, as you will call it. It's not easy at all. I mean, I'm not going to paint a rosy picture and saying it's all not easy. No, it is not easy. Even if you're privileged, even if you have all the access to power, even if you have friends across who are going to stand by you, when you are attacked, you're alone. Let's be very clear about it. You are alone. It's just you, and everybody close to you is collateral damage. That complicates the entire thing. Now, threats, yes, they do come. They have come in the past. Yes, it's not fun. And I think the biggest danger is what they leave behind after that period of violence against you, which is you looking over your shoulder always. And I will tell you that it's affected me too, without doubt, right? So it's not like that you're silenced. It's like you wonder, you're writing a column, and there's a line there, you've written the column, and you're going back to the column and say, should I say that? Or maybe I'll just say it slightly milder. That's nothing but self-censorship. Or when I sing, I want to sing some song, and I'm second-guessing my brain and saying, are you sure? Are you sure you want to sing it here? You know? So, it is very hard. It's very hard, and it bothers you deeply, because also it irks you. You know what I mean? That you're doing that? It really bothers you. Why are you doing it? Just do what you want to do. Just sing. But it bothers you. But I think each of us have to find a way of fighting through that. Or shall we say, letting that feeling pass and say, I will do it. There are risks involved. There are many risks involved, and there will be many situations. But you just have to. But I will tell you why. I'll give you one more reason why I think it's incumbent on people like me to do it. People of marginalized communities, whether it is Dalits or trans people or women, they have always done this for hundreds of years. They have made songs, political songs, they have spoken about inequality, and at that time I was happily sitting. I think I can afford to take some risk in my life. That's not a good enough excuse. When these people have singing songs of inequality for 100 years in multiple languages, tribals have done it for so many years, women have written poetry galore, they've literally bared their emotions to the public, and they have taken chances that I have not taken. And I think I should just take the chance. That's it.
Yes, precarity is the name of the game, so to speak. It's almost 6:15, which is the time that's been given us. But on behalf and voicing the concern of all the people here, I'm not going to thank you. I'm just going to say, please be careful. Because this world, this country, this music, this time needs you, and more people like you.
Thank you.
Please be careful.
മനോഹരമായ ഈ സംഭാഷണത്തിന് ഇരുവരോടും ഞങ്ങൾ കടപ്പെട്ടിരിക്കുന്നു. നന്ദി ശ്രീ ടി എം കൃഷ്ണ സർ, നന്ദി ശ്രീ എം വി നാരായണൻ സർ.
Yes, very important. Yes. You please.
വളരെ ചരിത്ര പ്രാധാന്യമുള്ള ഈ ഒരു ഗ്രാമം മറ്റൊരു ചരിത്ര സംഭവത്തിന് സാക്ഷിയാവാൻ പോവുകയാണ്. പരിപാടിയിലൊന്നും പറയാതെ തികച്ചും അപ്രതീക്ഷിതമായി ഇന്ന് വികസിച്ചു വന്ന ഒരു സംഗതിയാണ്. പളനി സുബ്രഹ്മണ്യം പിള്ള എന്നുള്ള മൃദംഗ ട്രിനിറ്റീസിലൊരാളായി കരുതപ്പെടുന്ന മൃദംഗിസ്റ്റിൻ്റെ ഗ്രാൻഡ് നെവ്യൂ, മരുമകനായിട്ടുള്ള ശ്രീ മുരളി എന്ന മാന്യദേഹം, അദ്ദേഹം US-ലാണ്. അദ്ദേഹം ഇപ്പോൾ കോയമ്പത്തൂർ വന്ന് കൊടുമുണ്ടയിൽ TM കൃഷ്ണ എത്തുന്നു എന്നറിഞ്ഞ് ഇവിടെ വരികയും